What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. Alright, so before I get into this video, I want to say a couple of things. First of all, shout out to the LDBC. Shout out to, Ticket TV, 78 Sports TV, 1LVZ, LB, Mahari, QuestX, Town Biz, Reef, all you guys. Alright? And I want to thank all of the new subscribers that have come over to my channel. Despite the fact that I know YouTube has shadow banned my channel, I'm trying my best to break through that. And I see I've gotten a little surge in recent subscribers. So I want to thank all you guys that have come over and have discovered this channel. And I want to give a shout out to two subscribers that have contributed to my channel. I want to give a shout out to Aram for his contribution to the channel. I saw your video request, and I will do a video about a old school player. I'll be premiering it tomorrow. I know I've gotten a little bit away from doing that, but I will do a video about a old school player. I'm not going to name who it is, but you'll see it. A video I'm going to debut in the morning. And I want to give a shout out to Gabriel. I want to give a shout out to Gabriel for his contribution. And Gabriel is the reason why I'm doing this video. He said, I love your channel. Keep up the good work. And I would like to know who's in your top 10 for greatest WWE wrestlers of all time and why. Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not a huge wrestling fan. I have a friend of mine, a childhood friend of mine, right, who I've been really wanting to come over on my channel and collab and talk about wrestling, because he's more of a wrestling expert than I am. I mean, he is so much of a wrestling expert / football expert / baseball expert that I really almost want him to collab with me on my channel. Like he's really been building up my personal knowledge when it comes to sports outside of basketball. I've been, absorbing him like a sponge, but he's more the expert. But I know enough about the WWE to make an educated evaluation, I guess, of the wrestlers that have come before me and reading about the history of the sport, so I can make a respectable, I guess, analysis of the top tier wrestlers. I'm more secure and confident in my top 5 and 6, but the rest of them, it's interchangeable. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to start with the top and go down. I know people like to usually go in, ascending order to reveal their number one, but I'm going to go for number one. Number one is obviously an easy pick, man. I mean, despite the fact that he's a racist, despite the fact that, his personal reputation has taken a huge hit over the past, really 20 years. Well, really, you can trace it back to the steroids scandal with WWF at the time, but really, since he's retired, his reputation has taken a huge hit. But he still is, to me, the greatest wrestler of all time. It's Hulk Hogan. You got to give it to him. You know what I'm saying? People might look at O.J. Simpson as the murderer. Ty Cobb, even though I don't think he did it, but Ty Cobb was a piece of shit, but you got to give it to him. He was a Hall of Fame player. And when it comes to Hulk Hogan is the greatest wrestler of all time. I mean, he is the one who single-handedly pushed wrestling from being a regional sport with moderate popularity to being a global, I'm using air quotes saying this, sport. Okay, and at one time, Hulk Hogan was more popular than Michael Jordan. okay, and arguably more popular than Mike Tyson. I'm talking about like 86, 87. He was that popular. He was a crossover. Now, was he the most skilled wrestler? No. But his look, his look probably was a detriment when you look at wrestling history. Eventually, because more and more wrestlers wanted to attain that bodybuilder physique. So, and we all know Hogan was doing it using anabolic steroids, of course. But still, he pushed the sport to heights never seen before, and achieved popularity that no other wrestler really has quite reached. Now, you've had some other ones come close, but not quite to that extent. And I think the thing that really pushes him ahead of everybody else is Hogan was known as a face, right? He was a face. Although he started off as a heel, but he became globally popular, turned as a face. But then when he went to WCW and became Hollywood Hogan and the NWO, and I mean, that really, he pulled it off. Because he really was being himself, because he's an asshole. But, Hogan, his longevity, success, popularity, all of that shit. His ring, how can I say this? His in-ring showmanship, I guess, his gimmick, all of it was brilliant. So Hulk Hogan to me is number one. Number two is Andre the Giant. Some people might have somebody else there, but I have Andre the Giant number two. I think that Andre the Giant was the first guy to really push wrestling to a new level, aside from where it was before. I think Andre's popularity is what led to wrestling becoming what it became in the 80s. When Andre was at his peak, wrestling was still a regional sport. Andre was being loaned out to different territories. But every territory and every arena that he appeared in, he sold it out. He was the eighth wonder of the world. Now, was he really 7'4"? No, I think he was probably 7 feet. I think he was barely 7 feet tall. And I think toward the latter parts of his career, he was more like 6'10". But still, he was a huge, massive figure, incredibly strong. I think at his absolute best, it was when he was in the mid to excuse me, in the mid to late 70s. Before he got really heavy. I think when Andre is about 7 feet tall, maybe 400 pounds, that's when he was at his absolute best. He was extraordinarily strong, but he was still agile. And I'm talking about the Andre that had like the big puffed out afro. Not the Andre with the sloppy sideburns and could barely move in the ring with the big belly when he was 500 and plus pounds. The Andre, if you've never seen Andre in the 70s, it's like looking at a different guy. He was extraordinarily agile. But, of course, the course of his disease, acromegaly, it took a toll on his body, his organs. It prematurely aged him. And he was a shell of himself by WrestleMania 3. But still, WrestleMania 3 is when he passed the torch to Hulk, and Hulk Hogan just took it from what he was doing and brought it to a whole different level. But number two to me is Andre the Giant. Number three would be Ric Flair. Ric Flair to me was the bad boy version and the heel version of Hulk Hogan. All right, and he was the NWA's and then WCW's version of Hulk Hogan. I mean, he was the first star. I was astounded to find out that when he first started wrestling, Ric Flair was a fat dude. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was watching Ric Flair wrestle in the 1970s. And this guy was almost 300 pounds. He was almost 300 pounds. And then I think he got into, if I'm not mistaken, I might be off with this, I think he got into a plane crash, which he survived, but he hurt his back. And I think to take pressure off his back, he stopped lifting weights and he gradually lost weight. And then he became the Ric Flair that we saw in the 80s, who was about 225 pounds or so, far slimmer. But I think it was the best thing to happen to him, you know what I'm saying? You know, Ric Flair, his look, you know, it fit that time period, you know, that Wall Street, you know, pretty boy, but still bad boy, you know, glamorous, materialistic 80s. His gimmick fit that era, you know what I'm saying? But it wasn't just a gimmick. He was, you know, he had a lot of charisma. You know, he was mimicked by many of us, you know, with the sayings, the woo, you know, just everything he did. And he was a 14-time champion. I think when you combine the WCW and WWE, 14-time champion. So Ric Flair to me is number 3. Number 4 would have to be Stone Cold Steve Austin, man. Stone Cold Steve Austin was the only wrestler I saw whose popularity even came close to what Hulk Hogan's was. And it's fun, and he also popularized the anti-hero trend that we saw. You know, everybody else, it was like before Stone Cold, it was a clear line between being a heel and a face. But Stone Cold, who I remember when he crossed over from WCW to WWE, was the Ringmaster, which was a terrible gimmick. But then he came back as the Stone Cold character, right? And at first he was a heel, right? And he played it like he was a psycho. But then something interesting happened. I think it was during a bout he had with what's his name? Bret the Hitman Hart. And the crowd was supposed to be cheering for Bret the Hitman Hart, but they ended up cheering for Stone Cold. And then Stone Cold, and I guess, you know, Vince McMahon and them, said, we need to play this guy as an anti-hero. You know what I'm saying? And that's how they played him. And now you see all, in entertainment, you see all these anti-heroes now. You know, the Godzilla movies didn't really become successful until they figured out, hey, we can't keep playing Godzilla as a villain over here. We got to play him, he's an icon. We got to play him as an anti-hero, which they started doing in 2014. And in the last movie that came out last year. And with Venom, Spider-Man. They played Venom as an anti-hero. And that's something that, you know, that you could possibly trace to Stone Cold, you know? So, you know, that's my guy, number 4. Number 5, Undertaker. The Dead Man. You know what I'm saying? Awesome gimmick. You know, an undead corpse. Is that how he started off, man? With Paul Bearer, without Paul Bearer. I liked all incarnations of Undertaker. I liked him when he had the motorcycle. He was the outlaw type, you know, character. But it was that streak that he had at WrestleMania, I think. What was it, 20 or 21 consecutive unbeaten matches at WrestleMania that established his legend. He was just one of the most menacing and intimidating figures in wrestling history. And not only was he popular, from what I read, popular with fans, but even with fellow wrestlers, his standing is unbelievable. They love him. He's a nice guy. He's a very... I didn't meet him, but I had a friend of mine that saw him one time and said that he was a really nice guy. You know, huge, but a nice guy. So that's my top 5. Now, like I said, I'm very definitive about my top 5. Now, after that, it's interchangeable a little bit. I mean, I guess for historical purposes, I would put maybe at number 6, maybe Bruno Sammartino. He's probably the most dominant champion of his times and one of the most dominant champions of all times. He was the man back in those days in wrestling in the 1960s and 1970s. And Bruno Sammartino is an absolute legend. And I think he should be in most people's top 10 if you're talking about a historical standpoint, you know what I'm saying? Or at least near the top 10. At number 7, I guess I would have The Rock. You know, I mean, his popularity was, I think, in the Attitude Era, second only to Stone Cold. Very funny. Very great at ad-libbing. Hilarious dude. You know what I'm saying? Great wrestler. Okay. Although I don't, for the life of me, understand how the people's elbow is supposed to be a move to devastate your opponent. I don't get it. It's like the leg drop. What is so devastating about that move? But anyway, you know, the people's elbow is great and all that shit. But then, of course, he's the only wrestler to really successfully transition to movies. The only one. I mean, you know, you had other guys that have made movies, but he's the only one to really successfully transition to be a sustained star and have success in Hollywood. So for that alone, he needs to be in people's top 10, I think. So that's number 7. Number 8, number 9, number 10. I mean, it's kind of interchangeable after that, man. I guess you would have to throw in, you know, Dusty Rhodes, maybe. Probably superstar Billy Graham. He was very inspirational and very, he was a big star in the 1970s. Like I say, he's very inspirational to that generation. As far as, interviews and his ring style and stuff like that. But yeah, I guess those two, and then maybe probably I had to put Bret the Hitman Hart round out the top 10. You know what I'm saying? I think that would probably be like my top 10. People could probably have some other guys in there, you know, to interchange with those guys, but that's probably my top 10. But like I said, it's been a while since I really sat back and thought about it. But that's probably about my top 10. I'm trying to think of there's people that I'm missing. I mean, there's other wrestlers, but none of them really come to me like, oh, hell no, I got to put him right here. You know, I could have them like under these guys like Macho Man and, you know, even Ultimate Warrior who's pictured here. I don't know if he's a top 10 all-time wrestler. I don't know, me personally. You could make an argument that Sting should be in this top 10. And if that's the case, what I would do is I would take out superstar Billy Graham and put Sting in the top 10. But other than that, That's about my top 10. So tell me what you guys think of my list. Some of you might think it sucks, but tell me what you guys think, especially you guys who are much more informed about wrestling than I am. All right, because I don't pretend to know every goddamn thing. I don't. But tell me what you guys think.